for a solution, if you would, and asking for more action on the part of the White House. Being a law enforcement officer, I'm used to things moving at the speed of government, but nonetheless, I've been asking for it. Here this morning, I've been talking to the White House off and on for the past couple of years now with regard to this topic, border security. As you all know, it's near and dear to all of us, being that we're so close to the border, and we have our own share of border issues here locally. With that being said, this morning, representatives from the White House reached out to me, happy to say that they wanted me to weigh in on this bipartisan legislation that's being introduced and debated later on this week. While I would certainly agree that can it always be more perfect than what we have and what we're seeing? Absolutely. But with that being said, the changes that I've been, in fact, asking for, this bill comes pretty close to addressing all of the issues that I've brought up and I've addressed that are important to me. With that being said, what I'd like to do is read a statement that I've prepared for this. I want to make sure that I don't miss any of the points that I wanted to touch upon. Y'all aren't used to me reading necessarily. You're used to me going off the cuff. But then I'll also touch on some of the topics that I've pulled from the fact sheet that was sent that, again, I feel more closely address the topics that I care about as a law enforcement officer. So let me just read this. As a Texas sheriff who works quite well with my counterparts throughout the state, regardless of party, I've always appreciated a bipartisan approach to protecting and serving our community. This bill accomplishes just that. Today, I'm pleased to see that a bipartisan group of United States senators, working closely with the Biden administration, has presented legislation that dramatically improves public safety by increasing the number of first responders and equipping them with cutting-edge technology. Furthermore, this bill strikes an ideal balance between compassion and preserving the protection of our border. This comprehensive legislation allows us to manage the number of people crossing our southern border. It also streamlines the process for those coming to this country to seek gainful employment. Being a first responder, I highly appreciate this effort by the Biden administration and Republican and Democratic senators that helped craft this critical legislation. While I recognize that the legislation process is messy and not always perfect, we cannot allow paralysis by analysis. So I'm excited to see this come about. Just to touch on some of the high points that I pulled out of the bill for our purposes here today. It provides critical funding for combating smuggling and drug trafficking, border security, and asylum processing. Strengthens federal law against fentanyl trafficking. Fentanyl's one of those things that we have been doing, not just more than our fair share of enforcement and arrests, but we also do a lot of public education. We host the presentations around the entire county about that topic. This increases lawful pathways to come to the United States, which obviously there's a lot of folks that say they don't mind the immigration, they just want it done the right way. This does just that. It promotes family unity and stability for non-citizens. It provides temporary emergency authority for the president to shut down the border when the system is overwhelmed. And it establishes an efficient and fair process for consideration of asylum and other protection claims by those arriving at our southwest border. Este día nosotros estamos dando nuestra información en soporte de la ley que va a ser presentada por el presidente de los Estados Unidos, Joe Biden, y senadores de los dos partidos políticos, que ellos van a hablar de esta ley esta semana. Pero esta mañana el White House me llamó a mí para pedirme mi opinión de esta ley. Yo ya se sabe que por varios años ha estado mandándoles cartas al presidente, a la White House también, a la administración, para pedir ayuda para mi condado. Esto es lo más importante para mí. Esta mañana me pidieron mi ayuda y yo viendo esta ley, viendo la información que viene, yo puedo soportar esto. Entonces quería tener esta conferencia de prensa para darles mi opinión sobre esto. Are there any questions on the proposed legislation, or my take on it, I should say?
So you said you were invited to the White House. When are you going up there? Or?
No, not invited yet. Invited to give my opinion, to weigh in on it, and I support it. I know for a fact from the Bexar County Sheriff perspective of it is going to be different than, say, a senator from another state, a U.S. congressman from another state. They may have a different take on it. I can tell you the topics that I've been asking for in the various letters to the White House. This pretty much comes close this comes pretty close to covering those topics. So is it completely the most perfect plan I've ever heard of? Well, no. I know for a fact there's going to be some people that have opposition, probably on both sides of it. From my perspective, I do support it.
So some of the editing to the asylum process, you're in favor of that?
I'm sorry?
Some of the editing to the asylum process?
I think so. I've seen some things in here that streamline the process, some things that are in here with regard to allowing work visas in a quicker time period. Look, I've said it for some time. You can walk into any restaurant here, any place of business, and everybody's hiring because everybody's short on workers. Yet we've got these folks that are coming across that just can't wait to do some of the jobs that Americans just won't do. This comes pretty close to tying the loose ends on those two ropes that need to be tied up. We obviously need workers. You've got people willing to do the work. I would like to see some things done with regard to making sure that they're paid a living wage, and then tax them on that living wage, right? Let them. But I want to make sure that there's some things in place, maybe not as part of this legislation, but through part of different legislation that would force employers to pay them a fair wage and not take advantage of the fact that these people are here and may be easier to take advantage of for people that have bad intentions toward them. But yes, I do like the processes in place for streamlining and giving work visas.
You just said, not the whole thing, but what you just said is very important to the folks that speak Spanish.
Sí, la ley tiene partes que a mí me gustan, obviamente, de dar auxilio a la gente que viene al país, pero más importante para mí, para darles permisos a trabajar. Ya nosotros sabemos, simplemente con ir a cualquier tienda, a cualquier negocio, a cualquier restaurante, se nota que no tienen muchos trabajadores. Uno tiene que esperar mucho tiempo por su comida, por ejemplo, en restaurantes. Pero ya sabemos que por la frontera al sur tenemos mucha gente que vienen solamente para trabajar. Son gente que con orgullo hicieron ese trabajo, que americanos obviamente no quieren esos trabajos. Para mí esta ley tiene eso, tiene un proceso para darles el permiso a trabajar a esas personas. Eso nos puede resolver un problema importante para nosotros, y para mí me da gusto dar el apoyo a esta ley.
¿Qué sientes que faltó del documento?
¿Mande?
Algo, porque dijiste que tenías casi todo lo que estabas pidiendo, pero algo más.
No, yo puedo entender si hay otras personas en cualquier partido que no les va a gustar 100% de este documento, pero para mí, para las cosas que yo les estaba pidiendo al presidente, a la administración, esto cubre la mayoría de las cosas que yo he estado preguntando. Pero ya puedo entender que esta ley no va a ser para 100% de la gente. Obviamente en este negocio, en la política, todo lo que hacemos no les va a gustar a 100% de la gente, pero ya con la mayoría pudiendo entender lo que cubre los asuntos que están cubiertos por esta ley, para mí me gusta, y por eso estoy apoyando al presidente en esto.
What are your thoughts about Speaker Mike Johnson saying that this bill is going to get on arrival in the House?
I mean, that's kind of a narrow-minded approach. I don't know that he had seen it in its entirety to make that determination up front. I think that right there just seems like somebody that's just itching to play politics and watch something fail. Look, I'm never a big fan of folks that pride themselves on the ability to stand in the way of the opposing party just for the sake of standing in the way of it. So in other words, I'm going to run on my ability to halt government processes just because I don't like the people from the other side of the aisle. I've said this many times, and I'm going to reiterate it again, that the rest of the world in politics could absolutely take a lesson from Texas sheriffs. To us, it's not a red and blue issue. It's about the gold in our badges, and the knowledge that if we don't stand together as Texas sheriffs, then that makes our state weaker. And so, again, to just be able to say that something's dead on arrival before you've even had a chance to look on it, or ask the other members of whatever government body what they think of it, I think it's a narrow-minded approach.
Keeping on the subject of politics, I mean, you yourself, you're a Democrat. I'm sure there are border sheriffs that are on the Republican side of things. Do you know of any other sheriffs that have been asked to provide their feedback as well?
I have been asked to wrangle some Texas sheriffs, and which I'm in the process of doing that. We've got actually a conference call or a Zoom that's going to be taking place later this afternoon, and I've been asked to invite some people along, and I have. Haven't gotten. I can understand a lot of my colleagues are probably pretty busy right now, and so I'm getting together some folks. We'll see how many are on the call. I will be on the call this afternoon, but no, as far as anybody being called this morning, I don't know of anybody else.
So with your role in helping shape this or move the conversation forward, what type of impact are you hoping to have, given that this bill has already been started, going to go through the Senate?
Mm-hmm.
What more do you feel like you can add to it?
Well, I mean, I can say, like, if, for example, if any of the legislators that represent this area and want to know where I stand on it, in making their decision whether to agree or disagree, I'm telling them right now, emphatically, I support it. Like I said, is it 100% the most perfect piece of legislation I've ever seen? No, I don't. I've never seen a perfect piece of legislation. But I can tell you, as the sheriff of Bexar County, 1,200 square miles, 2 million residents, I'm sworn to protect and serve them on a daily basis. I think this comes pretty close to allowing me to do that.
Sheriff, I have a couple of off-topic questions
Sure.
on the RAND Collective.
Sure.
First, can you talk a little bit about why you had an attorney send the cease and desist letter, in particular why you didn't want PCSO mentioned or your name? And second, do you think that the DA's office violated any attorney-client privileges with all of those text messages in that conversation?
Well, being that I don't know who this collective is, I have no clue who they are. And I don't know that I want to know or care to know who they are. I just felt it was more appropriate to have an attorney that I'm acquainted with, that I'm comfortable with, send that letter on my behalf. I felt that if I'm going to send something like a cease and desist, that I would hope never has to come to a court of law in later litigation. I would hope it doesn't ever come to that. I hope they just heed what's being put in that letter. I want something that's going to be sufficiently convey that to people receiving it on the other end. The attorney that I asked to send that on my behalf, Mary Peterzak, is tops in her game. I trust her. I have gone against her in a court of law, and I think she's a highly competent attorney, and so I value her input. And so when I needed somebody to send something to someone that I knew was not going to get lost in translation, she was the first person that I thought of, and so I asked her to send that on my behalf. Second part of your question, I'm sorry, Eddie?
Do you think the DA's office violated any attorney-client privileges with the conversation, those text messages?
So my main concern was that. At this point, the DA clarified some things for me, that in that instance that I was speaking about, it was a criminal matter. He doesn't feel that he was acting as my attorney in that moment, and so there was no necessarily attorney-client privilege protection of any statements made there. However, with that being said, I reiterated to him that, well, I still considered that a private conversation that I just didn't appreciate being shared with somebody that I have no clue who they are. And to be quite frank, some of the things that I saw on the coverage that you all provided on KSAT really worried me about this organization. I don't know that this is somebody that I feel needs to be inserted in a conversation that's between myself and the DA. With that being said, the reason that I was so concerned is I saw on some of those text messages, this organization, whomever they are, seemed very intent on having me weigh in on things that I have nothing to do with. And really, there's no, my opinion doesn't count on things like that. Things like officer-involved shootings involving the SAPD, I've got no business inserting myself in that situation, yet this organization was intent on having me stand there with the DA. I just said, look, I don't want any part of their strategy moving forward. Whatever it is they're trying to accomplish with Joe Gonzalez, the DA, I don't want to be part of their strategy moving forward. And so that's what that notice was.
Hey, can you say, I know you said some bullet points from your statement.
Yes, sir.
You didn't say that in Spanish. Can you just?
Yeah, absolutely. Esta ley, lo que yo he visto y los asuntos que yo, los puntos que a mí me gustan de la ley es que tienen manera de combatir el fentanilo, por ejemplo, el traficando de seres humanos. Nos da más oficiales de la ley que pueden trabajar en conjunto con nosotros para proteger no nomás nuestra frontera, pero también todo el estado de Texas. Equipo y herramienta que les van a dar a esos oficiales. Obviamente eso es algo que nos beneficia a nosotros también. Entonces hay varios puntos que yo he estado pidiendo del presidente y esta ley los tiene, tanto como los permisos para trabajar. Eso para mí es lo más importante, ya sabiendo que la mayoría de la gente que vienen del sur no están aquí para cometer delitos, no están aquí para ser víctimas los americanos, no están aquí para quitarnos trabajos. Ellos solamente están aquí para buscar mejor vida por ellos y por sus familias. Ellos, le apuesto que ellos prefieren estar en su país con sus familias, pero no pueden, no hay oportunidad ahí. Entonces ellos vienen para acá a riesgo personal y buscan trabajo honestamente. Y para mí este proceso les va a ayudar a esas personas que son nomás personas buenas, que solamente quieren trabajar honestamente. Esto les da eso.
Para mi entendimiento, ¿ya hay alguna fecha de cuando entraría en vigor esta ley?
Sé que ellos van a empezar el debate en esta ley esta semana. Me parece que el miércoles van a empezar. Yo voy a estar viendo con todo el mundo para ver qué va a pasar. Pero para mí, ojalá que todos los representantes que van a estar en este debate pueden poner su partido aparte y hacerlo mejor para el público americano y hacer lo mejor para mi comunidad aquí en el condado de Béjar.
Just to clarify the timeline, you said the representatives from the White House called you this morning.
Yes, sir.
To ask for your feedback, but it sounds like you're going to be reaching back out after this
Ye-
conference call where you're going to kind of give them that feedback?
Well, they called me for two things. They called me this morning to talk about that they were going to send me the bullet points on it. They wanted me to weigh in on it. So I have been weighing in with them. They know where I stand on it. They also wanted me to set up with some other area sheriffs, Texas sheriffs, border sheriffs, and even some non-border sheriffs to get them on a conference call later this afternoon. Granted, as I mentioned, my colleagues are pretty busy, so it's going to be hit and miss. I'm not going to get 100% participation. Matter of fact, I've already had one that said he can't make it. But with that being said, I hope to have several Texas sheriffs on there that they haven't necessarily seen this yet to the extent that I have. So in other words, on this call, they may be given some information. I'm hoping that most of them will join me on it, though.
¿Sabes cuántos oficiales te puede dar esta nueva ley?
Bueno, esto no va a ser para oficiales para mi agencia. Esto es para oficiales por las agencias federales. Pero para mí, entre más oficiales que tengamos, será mejor para el proceso y obviamente eso nos va a ayudar a nosotros también.
Going back to the notion of feedback, you mentioned that you've never seen a perfect piece of legislation. Is there anything in particular that's missing from this that you are going to advocate for when giving feedback?
No, I mean, look, for me, no. For me, this covered all the things that I've been hitting on my various letters. I think it's either 3 or 4 letters I've sent to the White House over the past several years. This touches on those. In the aftermath of one of those letters, I'm trying to remember when it was that I actually had a conference call with folks from the White House. I think it was early 2021, if I'm not mistaken. They asked me what my thoughts were on it and what my concerns were, and it was fentanyl, human trafficking, work permits, things like that. Again, that's all in here. So I don't have any complaints with this. You know, am I looking at it from the Bexar County Sheriff's point of view? Absolutely. And I can tell you right now, I'd bet dollars to donuts that senators and congressmen and other folks from other elected offices, other sheriffs in the state are going to look at it, and they may not like it as much as I do because they've got other concerns. I fully understand that, and I expect it. You can't get 2 elected officials to agree on where to eat lunch or what time of the day it is, right? So with that being said, I understand there's going to be some people that aren't as supportive of it. I happen to be.
And if you had to pick a favorite thing
about it? What would it?
I like the work visas part of it. Again, that's the thing that I can tell you. You go into any restaurant in the county, and you're going to be waiting for a while because they don't have enough servers, and they'll tell you flat out, "Hey, this section is open, so there's going to be a long wait over here because we don't have enough wait staff." Or, "Gosh, sorry, the kitchen's moving so slow. There's only 2 cooks back there, and there should be 12." That is something we've all heard hundreds of times every time we go out to eat with the family. So it's clear that Americans don't want those jobs because they'd be there doing them if that were the case. So as far as anybody losing their job because of this, I just don't see it happening. But when you've got a need for workers, you've got these tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people coming across that would beg to do those jobs. They'd be honored to do those jobs. I think it's just a matter of getting the government together and off our butts collectively and tie those 2 loose ends together. And I think this is a good step to that process.
¿Nos puedes explicar un poco cómo esa nueva ley ayuda contra la lucha contra el fentanyl?
Sí, pues para nosotros esto va a mejorar la ley por alguien que está, que los pescamos con fentanilo. Para mí eso es otra herramienta muy importante. Nosotros hacemos el esfuerzo, ¿verdad?, de arrestar a los responsables por traer el fentanilo, pero también nosotros educamos al público. Yo mismo doy una clase de fentanilo para las familias, para cómo prevenir una tragedia con los jóvenes, y cada herramienta que esta ley nos da a nosotros para poder mejorar nuestra lucha contra el fentanilo es algo bueno para mí. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it, guys. Y'all be safe. We'll send y'all the talking points on this if y'all want to see it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.